Hello guys, welcome back to Basketball Fan. So right now, we've got a really strange situation developing around Justine Pate and the Indiana Fever, and honestly, this whole thing feels like it came completely out of nowhere. There wasn't any build-up to it, no major reports, no warning signs, nothing that really hinted something was off. Up until now, everything looked normal. She had been practicing, she had been around the team, and from the outside looking in, there didn't seem to be any reason to suddenly worry. Now obviously, I'm not going to sit here and pretend we know exactly what's happening behind the scenes because we don't. Nobody outside that organization truly knows. But what we do know is that Justine Pate is currently out for the Indiana Fever matchup against Dallas, and that's where this situation starts getting confusing. It's one of those moments where you stop and think, wait a second, something about this doesn't really add up. Because when Stephanie White was asked directly about injuries after practice, she talked about multiple players dealing with issues. She listed names. She explained precautionary situations, but not once did she mention Justine Pate. Not even briefly. And that's what immediately raised eyebrows for a lot of people, because if a player is unavailable and the coach is openly discussing injuries, how does that player's name never come up? That's where fans start feeling like there may be more happening behind the scenes than what's being publicly said. The tone Stephanie White used was clearly centered around precaution, protecting players, managing health, and being careful this early in the season. But if that same logic applies to Justine Pate, then honestly, that creates an even bigger conversation. As strange as it sounds, the best-case scenario here may actually be that she's dealing with a real injury, because if she's healthy and they're holding her out purely for precautionary reasons, that becomes a really bad look for the Indiana Fever organization. And I mean genuinely bad. Because for a player in Justine Pate's position, preseason is not some meaningless exhibition schedule you casually sit through. For developmental players, preseason is everything. It's their biggest opportunity. It's their moment to prove they belong. This isn't just another game on the calendar for someone fighting for a roster spot. This is their Game 7. Their Super Bowl. Their one real chance to force an organization to pay attention. The financial difference between remaining on a developmental contract versus earning a full roster spot is enormous. We're talking about life-changing money, career stability, security, and opportunity. And when you specifically look at the Indiana Fever situation, it becomes even tougher because the Fever have shown they're not exactly eager to rely heavily on developmental players right now. They've built a system where earning a call-up is incredibly difficult, which means players like Justine Pate basically have one path available: to force the team's hand with undeniable performances. They have to play so well that the organization can't justify overlooking them. And that's why what happened in the preseason game against the Liberty stood out so much. Late in the game, when the third-string units were on the floor, Justine Pate came in and immediately knocked down 2 straight three-pointers. Back-to-back. Clean shots, confident release, no hesitation whatsoever. She looked comfortable, aggressive, and ready for the moment. But then almost immediately after getting hot, she was pulled from the game. And honestly, that's where people started questioning things, because normally in preseason basketball, especially when a player is fighting for a roster spot, coaches let them play through moments like that. If somebody catches fire, you usually give them more minutes to see if they can sustain it. You let them build confidence. You let them show the full package. But instead, she hits 2 threes and suddenly she's gone. So naturally people are asking why. And one theory that's gaining traction among fans is the idea that the Fever may actually be trying to keep her somewhat under the radar, because think about the situation from the organization's perspective. If Justine Pate stays in that game and keeps shooting lights out, suddenly the Fever create a difficult problem for themselves. If she goes 4 for 4 or continues dominating, now other teams around the league are paying attention too. At that point, Indiana risks losing her entirely if they don't commit a roster spot. Another team could immediately step in and grab her. So some fans believe the Fever may have decided to play things cautiously, limit exposure, and avoid creating a situation where public pressure starts building around keeping her on the roster. Whether that theory is true or not, we obviously don't know yet. But what we do know is that the entire situation feels unusual, And until the Fever fully clarify what's going on with Justine Pate, people are going to keep speculating because right now, from the outside looking in, something about this story simply doesn't feel normal. Welcome back to Basketball Fan. And honestly, this whole situation surrounding Justine Pate is starting to feel more serious by the day because now we're at the point where she's not playing, she's not being mentioned in injury updates, and fans can't even find her in training camp footage anymore. People have been searching through practice clips, photos, social media posts, and every little piece of content coming out of Fever camp trying to spot her, and she's basically nowhere to be seen. That's what's making everyone nervous, because now there are really only two possible explanations. Either she's legitimately dealing with some kind of injury, or the Indiana Fever are intentionally keeping her completely out of the spotlight. And based on everything we've seen recently, it's honestly starting to feel more likely that she may actually be hurt. On a human level, that's tough to see because these next few preseason games are absolutely massive for someone in her position. These are not meaningless games for a developmental player. These are her biggest opportunities. These are the games that could decide whether she earns a roster spot or ends up fighting for another chance somewhere else. Missing those moments is brutal because every minute matters when you're trying to prove you belong in the WNBA. But from the Indiana Fever's perspective, this situation may actually work perfectly for them strategically, and I know that sounds harsh, but if you look at it from a front office point of view, it honestly makes a lot of sense. The Fever clearly see something in Justine Pate. They obviously believe in her long-term potential. They see the upside, they see the talent, and they see what she could eventually become. The important thing, though, is that they may not feel like they need her immediately this season. So their ideal plan could be keeping her on a developmental deal this year, limiting how much exposure she gets, and preventing other teams around the league from getting a full look at her potential. Then next season, they could officially bring her onto a rookie-scale contract and start the clock from there. Because if she spends this season without officially playing, her rookie contract doesn't begin yet, meaning Indiana would still get 4 full years of team control starting next year. In professional sports, that's incredibly valuable. It's basically a redshirt year where a player develops behind the scenes without burning a year of the contract. Teams love situations like that because it gives them extra time to build a player up while maintaining long-term flexibility. So when you start viewing everything through that lens, suddenly the Fever's actions begin making a lot more sense. Now obviously, nobody is saying the organization wants her to be injured because no team wants that for a player. But if this is something minor, maybe a small 7 to 10 day issue or something precautionary, then strategically it could actually help Indiana. Other teams are far less likely to take a chance on a player they can't actively evaluate. Their attention shifts toward players who are healthy, available, visible, and consistently playing in games. Meanwhile, Justine Pate quietly stays under the radar, and honestly, that may be exactly where the Fever want her right now. So overall, this situation definitely isn't ideal for Justine Pate personally because these preseason opportunities are incredibly important for her career, but from the Indiana Fever's perspective, this outcome might actually line up perfectly with their long-term plans. Anyway, that's the video for today on Basketball Fan. Let me know what you think about the situation in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another update.